The morning sun cast a golden glow on the tarmac as Captain Simone Carter adjusted her uniform, her polished wings gleaming on her chest. Today was supposed to be the proudest moment of her career. After years of training, sacrifice, and proving herself in the air, she was about to walk into the headquarters of Atlas Skies Airlines as their newest pilot. She took a deep breath, smoothing the crisp navy blue fabric of her jacket. The airline had sent her a formal welcome email, instructing her to check in at the front desk before her official tour and introduction. But as she approached the towering glass doors of the airline's headquarters, she noticed something strange. The security guard at the entrance narrowed his eyes at her. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone laced with skepticism. "Yes, I'm Captain Simone Carter. I'm here for my first day," she said, offering a polite but confident smile. The guard's gaze flickered over her, lingering on her uniform, then shifting to her dark skin, his lips pressed into a thin line. "There must be some mistake," he said flatly. Simone's stomach clenched. "No mistake. I have my paperwork right here," she said, reaching into her bag. Before she could pull out the documents, the guard shook his head. "Pilots enter through the staff entrance," he muttered, nodding toward the side of the building. She glanced over. There was no staff entrance, at least not one that she could see. "That wasn't in my welcome packet," she replied. "Are you sure?" He sighed as if already tired of the conversation. "Look, I don't know how you got this uniform, but pilots don't just walk in here like that." Something cold crawled up her spine. "Excuse me? Pilots don't just—" She cut him off, her voice sharper now. "I am a pilot, a captain, hired by Atlas Skies Airlines. If you need confirmation, I suggest you call HR." The guard hesitated. His hand twitched toward his radio, but he didn't use it. Instead, his eyes hardened. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Simone's breath caught in her throat. She had heard stories like this before, but she never thought she would live one. "I'm not leaving," she said. "Call someone, a supervisor, anyone." A receptionist had been watching from inside. The moment Simone turned her head toward the glass, the woman averted her gaze, pretending to be busy with her computer. A sinking feeling settled in Simone's chest. She had worked too hard for this. She had earned this. But the guard wasn't budging. Finally, she took a step back. Then another. Without another word, she turned on her heel and walked away. But she wasn't done. Not by a long shot. By the time she reached her car, her hands were shaking with anger. She pulled out her phone, taking a deep breath before pressing record. "Hi everyone, my name is Captain Simone Carter, and I was just denied entry into my own workplace, Atlas Skies Airlines. I was hired as a pilot, came here on my first day, and was turned away because they didn't believe I belonged." She paused, steadying herself. "This isn't just about me. This is about every black woman, every person of color who has ever been told they don't belong in a place they earned." She hit upload. Within minutes, her phone buzzed with notifications. A few comments, then dozens, then hundreds. Within hours, her story had spread like wildfire. People were outraged. Pilots from other airlines, flight attendants, aviation. Enthusiasts and social justice advocates flooded the airline's social media pages. Leatherfly began trending on Twitter. News outlets picked up the story. By the end of the day, reporters were calling Atlas Skies Airlines for a statement. The airline scrambled to do damage control. They released a generic statement about miscommunication and unfortunate misunderstandings. But that only made things worse. Because now, other employees, former and current, began speaking up. Anonymous posts from past pilots surfaced. Stories of discrimination, of being overlooked for promotions, of subtle and not so subtle exclusion. It wasn't just Simone. It was a pattern. A week passed and the backlash didn't die down. It grew. Atlas Skies Airlines stock plummeted. Investors began pulling out. Customers started canceling flights, demanding refunds. Then the lawsuits started rolling in. The company tried to save itself, firing the security guard, offering Simone an apology, and promising new diversity initiatives. But it was too late. Executives resigned. Sponsors distanced themselves. The FAA started looking into past complaints. Atlas Skies Airlines, once a thriving company, was now drowning in controversy. And Simone? She had already moved on. Other airlines had reached out, offering her a position. She accepted one with a company that truly valued her. Months later, Atlas Skies Airlines officially filed for bankruptcy. One act of discrimination had unraveled an entire empire. And Simone? She was soaring higher than ever. Simone Carter sat in the cockpit of her new airline, her hands steady on the controls as she prepared for takeoff. The weight of what had happened with Atlas Skies Airlines still lingered, but not as a burden, rather as a reminder of the power of truth. She had never set out to bring down an entire company. She had only wanted to do what she loved, fly. But when she was denied that right, the world responded. As the engines roared to life, she reflected on everything that had unfolded. Atlas Skies had tried to sweep the scandal under the rug. After firing the security guard, they had attempted to offer Simone hush money, a generous settlement in exchange for her silence. She refused. They then tried to frame the incident as a simple misunderstanding, claiming the guard was acting alone. But the former employees who spoke out proved otherwise. One by one, more whistleblowers came forward. Black flight attendants, Asian American pilots, female mechanics. They shared their stories of being overlooked, dismissed, and disrespected. The problem wasn't just the guard at the front door, it was the culture of the airline. The final blow came when the FAA opened a full-scale investigation into Atlas Skies. Inspectors found years' worth of discrimination complaints buried under bureaucratic red tape. Former employees who had been wrongfully terminated now had the evidence they needed to file lawsuits. One by one, sponsors, partners, and investors abandoned ship. Then came the customer boycotts. Loyal passengers of Atlas Skies tore up their membership cards. Travel influencers and celebrities publicly vowed never to fly with them again. Airports began reevaluating their contracts with the airline. Within 4 months, Atlas Skies was forced to cut flights. Within 6 months, they announced major layoffs. By the end of the year, they had filed for bankruptcy, and all because one pilot had refused to stay silent. Simone's new airline, Horizon Air, had welcomed her with open arms. They celebrated her skill, her experience, and her resilience. They weren't just hiring her to fix their image. They saw her as an asset. She had been promoted faster than she ever expected. Now, as she sat in the captain's seat, looking out at the horizon, she smiled. This was where she belonged. She wasn't just a pilot. She was proof that one voice, when used for justice, could change everything. And with that, she pushed forward on the throttle. The plane lifted into the sky, soaring higher than ever before. As Simone Carter guided the aircraft through the sky, she felt a deep sense of peace, something she hadn't felt in months. The battle with Atlas Skies Airlines had been grueling, but now, in the open air, she was free. She had not just won for herself, but for every person who had been told they didn't belong. After the fall of Atlas Skies, the aviation industry took notice. Other airlines rushed to implement real diversity and inclusion initiatives, afraid of facing the same fate. Flight schools saw a surge in Black and minority applicants, inspired by Simone's story. But Simone wasn't done yet. She started speaking at aviation conferences, sharing her experiences and pushing for change. She partnered with organizations dedicated to increasing diversity in aviation. Her name became synonymous with resilience and justice. One day, while waiting at an airport lounge before her next flight, a young Black woman approached her, hesitating for a moment before speaking. "Captain Carter?" she asked, eyes wide with admiration. Simone turned and smiled. "That's me. I just wanted to say, you're the reason I'm here. I start flight school next month. I never thought I could be a pilot before I heard your story." Simone felt a lump in her throat. She had always hoped her fight meant something, but hearing it firsthand made it real. She extended her hand, shaking the young woman's firmly. "You can be a pilot, and not just any pilot, a great one." Tears shimmered in the woman's eyes. "Thank you." Simone watched her walk away, feeling something even greater than victory, legacy. She had done more than bring down an unjust airline. She had built something new, a future where no one would have to fight the way she did just to take flight. And that, she realized, was the greatest journey of all. As she stepped onto her plane once more, she knew her story was. Years passed, and Simone Carter's name became legendary in the aviation industry. She had not only exposed injustice, but had actively reshaped the landscape for pilots who came after her. Her work extended far beyond the cockpit. She launched the Carter Aviation Academy, a program dedicated to training and mentoring aspiring pilots from underrepresented backgrounds. The Academy received funding from organizations that believed in her mission, and within a few short years, it had produced dozens of skilled aviators who were now flying for major airlines. Simone also became a sought-after speaker, traveling the world to share her story. Universities invited her to give lectures, aviation conferences gave her standing ovations, and news outlets continued to follow her journey. She even testified before Congress, advocating for stronger protections against workplace discrimination. But despite all the recognition, Simone remained grounded, literally and figuratively. She never stopped flying. One afternoon, after landing a transatlantic flight in Paris, she received an unexpected email. It was from a former Atlas Skies executive. "Dear Captain Carter, I don't expect you to respond, but I felt compelled to write this. I was one of the executives who downplayed what happened to you. At the time, I told myself it was just business, that our company would survive, that your story would fade. I was wrong. After Atlas Skies collapsed, I had to confront some painful truths. I've spent the past few years working in a smaller airline, trying to rebuild my career and, more importantly, my perspective. I want you to know that your fight changed people, including me. I see now that the system we upheld was flawed. You didn't just bring down an airline, you forced an entire industry to evolve, and for that, I owe you my respect. I hope our paths cross again someday, under better circumstances." Simone read the email twice, letting the words sink in. She had never fought for revenge. She had fought for change. And now, even those who once stood against her were beginning to see the truth. That evening, as she gazed out at the Eiffel Tower, she realized something. Her journey was never about tearing something down. It was about building something better. And as long as there were skies to soar, she would keep flying. For herself, for those who came after her, for the future. Years later, Simone Carter stood on a stage before a packed auditorium. The banner behind her read, "Carter Aviation Academy, 10-year anniversary celebration." The audience, pilots, industry leaders, and aspiring aviators rose to their feet as she approached the microphone. She had come a long way since that fateful day at Atlas Skies Airlines. 10 years ago, she began, her voice steady but full of emotion. I was told I didn't belong in a place I had earned. I was turned away at the doors of an airline that had promised me a future, but what they didn't realize was that they were handing me something far greater, purpose. The room fell silent, captivated by every word. I fought back, not just for myself, but for the thousands of people who had faced the same invisible barriers. Today, I look around this room and see pilots, engineers, air traffic controllers, and dreamers who refuse to accept no as an answer. A thunderous applause erupted, but Simone wasn't finished. She took a deep breath. "And I have an announcement," she said, pausing as the audience leaned in. Starting next year, Carter Aviation Academy will be launching its own airline. Daughter, crowd gasped. That's right, she continued, her smile widening. We're not just training the next generation of pilots, we're giving them a place to lead. Our airline will be built on integrity, diversity, and excellence. No more closed doors, no more barriers, just a sky full of possibilities. The applause this time was deafening. As the crowd cheered, Simone felt the weight of the moment. She had not only survived the storm, she had become the storm, sweeping away the old and making way for something new. Atlas Skies Airlines had fallen, but from its ashes something stronger had risen. A legacy, a future, a place where no one would ever be turned away again. And as Simone stood there, taking in the standing ovation, she knew one thing for certain. The sky was never the limit. It was just the beginning. Months after Simone Carter's historic announcement, the aviation industry buzzed with excitement. The idea of a pilot-founded airline, built on principles of fairness, diversity, and opportunity, was unprecedented. Investors lined up. Pilots, flight attendants, and engineers sent in applications by the thousands. Simone named the airline Phoenix Air, a tribute to her journey, rising from the ashes of injustice to create something greater. The day of the inaugural flight finally arrived. The airport terminal was filled with reporters, aviation enthusiasts, and supporters eager to witness history. Simone stood at the gate, dressed in her captain's uniform, surrounded by the first-ever Phoenix Air crew. Unlike traditional airlines, Phoenix Air had implemented a revolutionary hiring process, one that prioritized skill and character over outdated biases. Beside her stood First Officer Malik Harris, a former Atlas Skies pilot who had been overlooked for promotions for years. Next to him was Captain Elena Ruiz, a Latina pilot who had fought against the same systemic barriers Simone had. Their entire crew represented what the industry should have always been: talent, diversity, and determination. A reporter rushed forward with a microphone. Captain Carter, how does it feel to be launching an airline that many people thought was impossible? Simone smiled. This isn't just about launching an airline, it's about proving that when you remove unnecessary barriers, everyone rises. We're here to set a new standard, not just in how airlines operate, but in how people are treated. Well, reporter nodded. And what do you say to the critics who claim Phoenix Air is too ambitious? Simone chuckled. I'd say the same thing people once told me, that I was too ambitious. But here we are, and now, we're about to take off. A voice came over the loudspeaker, announcing the final boarding call for Phoenix Air Flight 001. Simone turned to her crew. Ready to make history? Malik grinned. Let's show the world how it's done. As they walked toward the jet bridge, passengers clapped and cheered. Many of them had booked this flight just to be part of something historic. Simone took her seat in the captain's chair, running through final checks as the engines hummed to life. Then, with a deep breath, she pushed forward on the throttle. The aircraft rolled down the runway, picking up speed. And as it lifted off the ground, soaring into the sky, Simone knew. This wasn't just a flight. This was a revolution, and it was only the beginning.